So now that we have Tails installed on a USB stick, we can use this USB stick to boot into Tails from any computer, regardless of what operating system that computer runs. Whether it runs Windows, Linux, or OS X, it doesn't really matter. All we'll have to do is connect the USB device that we installed Tails to the computer that we want to run Tails on, start the computer or restart it if it's already running. Then, as it starts, before it even gets into the loading page of Windows or OS X, as soon as it starts, you want to enter the boot menu. Now this varies depending on the computer that you have. So you'll have to press a button or maybe a combination of buttons in order to enter the boot menu, and this will differ depending on your computer. So here I have a list of the most common brands and the corresponding keys that will allow you to enter the boot menu. For example, if you have an Acer, you should try to press Escape, F12 or F9. So what you do is you connect your USB device to the computer, you start the computer or restart it if it's already running, then keep pressing the Escape button multiple times until you see a boot menu like this one or similar to this one. If you don't see it, if you boot into the default operating system that your computer usually boots in, then you should restart and try the next option in the list. If you tried all of the options and it still doesn't work, then check out the links in the resources of this lecture on more info on how to boot into Tails. And if you can't find any help, then ask us in the Q&A section and we'll respond to you within 15 hours. Once you enter the boot menu, you want to select the option that will allow you to boot from a USB or an external storage. Hit enter, and you will see the Tails boot menu as you can see in here. You want to keep this at the first option and hit enter. This will start booting Tails from the USB device that you connected, so give it some time to start the operating system for you. Perfect, so as you can see, we have the welcome window of Tails, and if you want to start straight away, all you have to do is just click on Start Tails. But before doing that, let's take a quick look on the options that we can modify in here. So first of all, you can modify the language, which is set to English United States by default, and I'm going to keep it that way. The keyboard is also set to English US. Now you might want to modify this if you have a different layout, but I think it's a good idea to keep it at the default settings because that'll give even less info. Now I know I said that Tails won't leave any traces, but I just like to keep things to the default in here. Again, we have the calendar format. I'm going to keep that to the default. And at the bottom here, we have additional settings or advanced settings. So I'm going to click on the plus to show you the settings that you can set here. And the first thing that you can set is an administration password. So by default, Tails disables the admin account. So as you can see, it's set to off. So when you go and use the operating system, there will be no admin. The reason it's configured this way, so that if someone manages to hack into your system, they won't have admin permissions, so they won't be able to change core functions or core settings within the operating system, and they also won't be able to install any applications. If for some reason you needed to modify something that requires admin settings, or if you wanted to install programs on the system, then you can enable the admin account from here. You can click on this and you set a password, you repeat the password and click on add to add it. Keep in mind that this account will only be added for this current session. Once you restart the computer, the admin account will disappear along with all the modifications that you make to Tails, because like we said, Tails is a live amnesic operating system that completely wipes everything that you do every time you restart the computer. So when you create an admin account in here and log in, this admin account will disappear and will not even exist once you restart the computer. So if you want to use an admin account again, the next time you use the system, you're going to have to come to this menu and create it. But for now, I don't really want to do anything that requires admin privileges, and I don't want to install any programs. So I'm going to click on back, and I'm going to keep this to off. The next setting that you might want to modify is the Mac spoofing. And as you can see, this is set to on by default. Now, MAC address is a unique and permanent address that is assigned to every network device. It gets assigned to it at the time the device is manufactured, and it never changes. So for example, if I have an Ethernet card or a Wi-Fi card and unplug it from my computer and connect it to a completely different computer, that card will still have the same MAC address. Now, this MAC address is only visible within your network. It's not visible on the internet. As we know, Tails automatically routes all internet traffic through Tor, so we're not really concerned about stuff that happens on the internet. It should hide our identity automatically. But within the network, the MAC address is visible, and the MAC address is unique and permanent, like I said, and therefore it can be used to identify you. So this option by default is set to on, and I'm going to keep it to on so that Tails will also change my MAC address every time I start it. Therefore, my MAC address will be changed, so I'll be hidden or anonymous within the network, and when I connect to the internet, all the traffic will automatically go through the Tor network, and therefore it will improve my anonymity. The only time you might want to set this to off is if the network that you're connecting to uses a whitelist. So if it only allows specific MAC addresses to connect to it, and if your MAC address is one of these whitelisted MAC addresses, that's the only time that you might want to set this to off. Otherwise, it's better to keep it at on so your identity is hidden within your network. Now, the third option here, the network connection, and this is set to direct, the default. Like I said, this means that all traffic sent from any application on Tails will have to go through the Tor network. So this is perfect. But if we click on it, you'll also see we have two other options. The second option is to configure a Tor bridge or a proxy. And we already discussed what bridges, pluggable transports, and proxies are previously in the course. We discussed how to get them and why you might want to use them. So I'm not going to really talk about it right now. If you don't remember what they are, please go back and revise the previous section. I will, however, show you how to use a bridge or a pluggable transport with Tails, because we only covered how to do it with Tor browser. So I'll show you how to do this with Tails in a future lecture. For now, we're keeping this to the default. Obviously, the third option here will disable all networking. We don't want to this right now. So we're keeping everything here to the default, and I'm going to click on cancel. And we're back to the welcome menu, in which we can just shut down or start Tails. So now that we're happy with all of these settings, I'm going to click on Start Tails to start the operating system. And perfect, as you can see, we get a nice and simple desktop. I know it might look strange to you, especially if you're used to Windows, but don't worry, it's actually very simple to use. And it's very similar to a lot of operating systems, even though it looks a little bit different. In the next lecture, we'll have a basic overview on this operating system, its menus, how to use it, how to interact with it, just so that we get more comfortable with using it.